So one of America's most wanted terror suspects is being interrogated right now aboard a U.S. warship in the Mediterranean. Abu Anas al-Libi, one of the founding members of al-Qaeda and a former confidant to Osama bin Laden, was captured over the weekend by U.S. Special Forces in Libya. Al-Libi was indicted more than 10 years ago for his role in the 1998 embassy bombings that killed 223, including 12 Americans. And today, the White House confirmed that after his interrogation, al-Libi will be transferred to the U.S. to stand trial.
That indictment has been pending, and we believe in a system that brings people to justice through indictment, and that's what we're witnessing now.
So just hours before al-Libi's capture in a separate operation in Somalia, Navy SEALs were forced to abandon a raid targeting a top member of the terror group al-shabaab, the al-Qaeda-linked group responsible for the attack at a mall in Kenya 2 weeks ago. NBC News Chief Foreign Correspondent Richard Engel joins me now live for more about these two missions. So let's start with al-Libi. Let's describe, Richard, the life he's been leading and how he's been leading that. But what type of gold mine, information-wise, he can be now in U.S. custody?
That's unclear. He was a founding member of al-Qaeda. He's named al-Libi because he is Libyan. Al-Libi means the Libyan in Arabic. He was close to Osama bin Laden, deeply involved in the 1998 attacks on the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. Someone who's thought to be quite smart on computers, was an early analyst or communications officer in al-Qaeda, but he hasn't been that active in recent years. So it's unclear if he's going to have any real actionable intelligence, but he'll certainly know other al-Qaeda members or al-Qaeda-like members who are in Libya. So that's a potential.
And meanwhile, wasn't completely off the grid in an underground
No, he was
capacity,
living quite known in Tripoli. His wife gave an interview on television today. His two sons have spoken on television, pointing out the scene of what some Libyans are calling a crime, and what U.S. officials say was an absolutely legal rendition of somebody who needs to face justice.
Okay, so we've got that, and now al-Libi in custody. And then on the other side of the raid spectrum, what happened in Somalia and the Navy SEALs, and that operation didn't go as effectively as planned.
Absolutely not. This operation in an urban area in Tripoli was a snatch and grab. 3 cars came up. They surrounded Liby's vehicle, they smashed the window, they dragged him out, they took him away. In an urban area where the Special Operations Forces, the U.S. commandos, were able to get quite close to the target without being noticed, because if you're in traffic in a vehicle, who knows who's in a car or in a vehicle, especially if you're wearing local clothing. To attack a beach in Somalia, in a town that is run by militants, where there's no government, that's pretty obvious. Imagine dark of night, dinghies pulling up on the beach with men in guns opening fire. So that was the kind of raid that happened. And when that beach landing happened in Somalia, there was a big gunfight. And you said they were forced to withdraw. Now, they were forced to withdraw, but they could have done something else. The U.S. military could have simply called in an airstrike, but didn't. They wanted to capture or kill this one specific target without creating a lot of collateral damage. So they could have just called in an airstrike. That would have been the easiest thing to do. If you know where the target is, you can just bomb it. But they wanted to get him.
And meanwhile, there was no loss of life on the American side. So
if there had been loss, that's why the threshold for risk is quite low. Because if one of these Navy SEALs had been hurt, let alone killed, a lot of people would have asked, well, why didn't you just bomb the target?
Richard Engel, great to have you here, Richard. Thank you, sir. All right, so let's bring in former White House counterterrorism official and NBC terrorism analyst, Roger Cressy. Roger, great to have you here. And let me ask you about the style, the tactics used in these two missions, because we've got the story in the LA Times saying, quote, that U.S. raids on al-Qaeda operatives now shift away from drone strikes. And as Richard was saying, do you think that these operations, in fact, represent that true change in strategy, where hindsight being 20/20, people then question the collateral damage that happens in those?
Right, I saw that on the crawl, and you know what? That's just wrong.
I'd like to listen.
There is a little bit of the lemming after-action analysis going on right now. The reality, Thomas, is that the United States government is going to choose what type of military force they use based on the country, the target, and the local setting, and all those things come together. The United States is still going to conduct drone strikes as it believes it's the right thing to do to take out terrorist operatives. If they have an opportunity, like they did in Libya, to snatch Abu Anas al-Libi, they will do that. And by the way, an important distinction here. This was what used to be called an extraordinary rendition. This wasn't a rendition. A rendition is when you capture someone with the assistance of the local government and their full knowledge. We did not work with the Libyans here. We did it all on our own, and then we took them out of the country. That's why the Libyan government is so bent out of shape. So this was more consistent with how we used to do things in the past, in the extraordinary rendition. So again, it's a case-by-case basis, and I hope everyone's not going to well, we're not going to use drone strikes anymore. Oh, hell yeah, we will. But it depends on the target.
What do you think about the U.S. putting such a high priority on al-shabaab and what happened in Somalia? So that didn't go 100% the way that they had planned. But what about the attention, the priority that's being placed on it?
Well, I think it reflects a couple things. One, the recognition in the aftermath of the Westgate Mall massacre that Shabaab still poses a threat, not just within Somalia, but an ability to project out into neighboring countries. And remember, Thomas, we have hit Shabaab multiple times over the past few years using special forces and SEALs, using aircraft and using missile strikes. And as Richard said, we have called in missile strikes there in the past. So a variety of reasons not to, probably to minimize collateral damage and also hopefully to capture the target. I think it's just a reminder that in places like Somalia and elsewhere in Africa, there is an al-Qaeda presence or an al-Qaeda affiliated presence that is going to be a priority for U.S. counterterrorism efforts. And we're going to see these type of attacks and these attempts to bring these people to justice off and on now for the foreseeable future.
Roger Cressy. Roger, great to have you here. Thank you.
You too, Thomas.
The Supreme Court says it's business as usual as it begins its new term today amid the government shutdown. Campaign contributions and prayer in school, just two of the hot-button issues on the agenda. Pete Williams is going to join us with a preview. Plus, rude awakening for a would-be robber after a store clerk breaks out a very unique instrument while trying to scare off that robber staring down at the barrel of the gun. It's one of the stories that we're following around the news nation today. Oh yeah, he breaks out a machete.